everyone, I'm Miss Rocket from Languissimo, and today I have a special guest that I would like to have a conversation with. It's Jane Duxer. She's been working at OCLF for about 8 years, and let's see what she has to say a little bit. Hi, my dear Jane.
Good
so happy
morning.
to see you. Yeah, good morning, my dear. So, OCLF, 8 years, and today I think I heard it's a special day today.
Indeed it is, Miss Vanessa. It is my last day at the job, and I am officially retiring at about 4 p.m. this afternoon.
Wow, that is unbelievable. So you've been working for how long? Today's the big day.
I've been working in the environment of work for 37 plus 8, so 45 years as of today. So I think it's well time to retire, but 8 of them in the last sector, being that with newcomers and immigrants, in a way of trying to give back after a big career within a financial sector.
So that was your way of, yes, getting back by entering this new sector. What is that new sector?
So the new sector is an organization, as you've mentioned, Ottawa Community Loan Fund, and our primary focus is on newcomers and immigrants to the country, helping them establish a grounded financial base and an understanding of the new environment they're coming into from countries all over the world, where our system is definitely different than where they've been.
Is there a country that you see that we get most immigrants from?
You know what? That's a really tough question, Vanessa, because a lot of it actually is dependent on what's happening in those countries. So as you can appreciate with Ukrainian situation a number of years ago when it was at its peak, of course, our country saw more of those immigrants as we were trying to help protect them. I would say on an average, definitely we get a higher number of folks from on the eastern or far east of the world. But honestly, all walks of countries and lives come to this great city called Ottawa, as we are the capital of the country, and it seems to draw probably a balanced group of individuals coming.
And have you seen an increase in the number of immigrations that come to get your services over those 8 years, 7, 8 years that you worked at OCLF?
Again, I'd say it's a bit of a up and down sort of situation, and it's a lot to do with what happens in the political environment as it relates to caps on immigration. So if you've read any of the recent news, there's definitely a sentiment of slowing down immigration into our lovely country. And so when that happens, we actually see a reduction in numbers. World events, as I mentioned, Ukraine definitely also impacts, our country is seen as one that's very open to helping others in environments that aren't as warm and welcoming as ours. And so, again, it's pretty hard to pinpoint because there are numbers and caps set as a country, but we do ride the up and down of that through every year when we see the newcomers arrive. So yeah, and it's an annual process. It's not windowed by time.
Okay, and what are the services that they need the most that you've seen over the years? What is it? Yes, that they really need when they come to Canada.
I'd say the first thing they need, anyone, is to join or come to see a settlement agency, and Ottawa has a large number of them. And really what that does is it allows them to understand what supports are available to them in the city. And it can be basic as in medical, getting healthcare for their family, getting set up with a driver's license, understanding if they have to go back to school and get English equivalency as a second language. So settlement agency would be their first stop in their journey into Canada, whichever city they're coming to. And then certainly from an OCLF perspective, we think the second most important thing, once you kind of understand where you're going to live and your children go to school, how to make ends meet, get employment, would be to understand how can we help you navigate the financial differences in this new country.
Yes, because we see that there are many different things, especially when it comes to credit, right? Anyway, I come from France, and at the time, it was not very popular to borrow money and use a credit card. And I don't think it still is, apart from buying a house. But otherwise, it's not the popular thing to do. And what do you see with these immigrants? Do they have a problem adjusting? Do they go too much into debt? What is it that you
Yeah, that's
you
a great question. And I would say for me, it's one of the biggest pitfalls or traps a newcomer can fall into. Because if you go to an airport, again, in any city in Canada, when the newcomers arrive, they are literally bombarded with people handing out brochures where you might want to live. Here, you need a credit card, you need this, you need that. But a lot of immigrants either have no experience with a credit card or to your point, didn't use them in the past. And so what happens is we actually see higher rate of use of credit without the understanding of what the interest rate is and how much they're going to have to pay after, which is really, really sad in my view, because they're here for a new life, and all of a sudden 6 months later it's like they can't make ends meet. So that was actually the introduction for OCLF to a series of financial literacy programs that we run, as do others in the city, to help educate newcomers to say, what is the basics of a good financial plan? How do you avoid the pitfalls and traps of high interest rate credit cards? What is prudent in terms of having savings and or investments in order to manage the ups and downs of life in a new country?
So yes, of course. How would you help them? What would be the first thing they should do then when it comes? So they're given this, paper when they land at the airport. So what do you recommend they should do as the first steps regarding credit or the credit card?
That's a hard one because it's more of a personal opinion than it is probably, and it's based on what you see. So my personal opinion would be, don't touch credit until you've had an opportunity to meet with either an organization that teaches financial literacy, or you can go into a financial institution and ask the questions that will help you decide, is this the right thing for me? Because the challenge is, if you don't have that education or that information, is we find people, many, English is a second language, so they don't understand that I'm going to get a credit card for $5,000 and oh my goodness, the interest rate is this big, not this big, and I have a repayment amount, and I have yet to be employed in this new country. And many of our newcomers are not coming on status where they would be coming with a bag full of cash with them or financially solid before they arrive. And so from my perspective, it's about educate first and then make an informed decision. And that's where any agency that teaches financial literacy in this country, in Canada, or even a financial institution, if they're actually prudent in their conversation, they should get the right information and say, you know what, this isn't the right time for this for you.
Yes, but I think because they're bombarded with so much solicitation, get the credit cards, they hear people tell them they have to have the credit card and the credit score. And so they feel that that's what they have to do. But I agree with you. Like you mentioned, it was your opinion, but I feel the same way, that they should just settle in. Okay, just get a feeling of how it works. And then, okay, you can start once you've had the information, take a credit card and then slowly. But I think it's too much. It's too soon and too fast, right? That they get that credit card and then they just follow what everybody else does, and it gets them, like you said, in a little trap. I've seen that also with financing a car. I try to tell my team to just try to get a cheap car, secondhand, that you can maybe buy cash or something, but not get into financing, because that one also is a big trap. What do you think? Have you seen that with the newcomers?
Well, yes,
or not, or maybe
we do. And I think that the challenge in our country is that it's too easy. And anybody, all of us, want to have the things that we think will make our lives easier. Who wants to get up and take transit every day to their job, or transit to their children's school and back every day? So it's natural for people to want to do those things. What happens, though, that in our experience, is that they don't have that experience outside of their own country. And in many cases, often we have female individuals who in their countries have never had access to financial or lending. And so they really are at a disadvantage if they happen to come in or ahead of their spouses and the rest of their family. And so it's really about trying to find the balance for them, but having them talk to the right people. And again, settlement agencies, there's a lot of educational programs through our standard schools that teach English as a second language to the newcomer groups. And a lot of that information is shared there. Certainly ourselves and other organizations are there helping them educate. And what is a credit score? Why is it important? How does it help you? What is an affordable car? What is an affordable payment? Because again, the other thing we see is they come thinking that everything is going to just line up in a row. And the reality of life, whether you're a newcomer or us, we can get up today and say, I'm going to drive somewhere and get there, find a place to park, and we don't. And so all of a sudden, the whole day has to shift in order to accommodate that. Well, for them, it's no different. It's just a bigger scale. All of a sudden, well, I bought the car because I need a car. In my mind, that's logical, makes sense, and they definitely need a way to get around. What they don't realize is, oh my goodness, when I go to pay my children's education fees or preschool, after school, the money that I've now said I've got for my car, I really needed for that. So it's more about what they don't know so quickly than what they do. It's a matter of helping them take the breath to understand, what is my full picture going to look like here? And that's part of financial education. What are all the things that are in your bucket coming in, and what's in that bucket coming out? And do you have enough coming in to offset the out? It's simple math. But when you're first in a new country, it's emotional. It's from the heart. I need a way to transport. Everybody here drives a car. Well, no, many take the bus. We have a great light rail transit system now, but that's not the first thing they feel, right?
Well, because they feel the cold at -40 in the winter.
Indeed.
Or in Canada, right? That's what we have. So,
do.
and they come maybe from countries that it's 40 degrees outside, right? So I feel it.
Absolutely. And in fact, we've had clients come in the winters and go, that have been to the Finland course. Is it okay if I get some, basic credit at whichever store to get my children's snow boots? And yes, that would be an acceptable use of those monies, as long as, again, what's coming in has enough to pay what's coming out. But absolutely, they feel that cold, probably worse than us that live here.
Yes, no, that's right. And I was a former skier, so I guess I was an advantage when I came to Canada. And I did come with a bit of cash. I was
Makes
lucky.
a difference.
Yes, no, definitely. How do you see language being a barrier, an obstacle, or an advantage for them to learn it or master it? Because I see a lot of them, they go to some trainings, and sometimes it takes way longer than they expected. So how can it impact their settlement in Canada? What do you see?
It's material. I think of, we were previous podcast talking about learning a second language, and I went to, adult education for 4 years, and I could barely, do basic Spanish, and it was something I wanted to learn. And so I think if I was immersed in a country that didn't speak my language, I know I'd be, oh my goodness. And so I think the challenge for newcomers is it's so much information. It's not, I'm here for a visit. I'm here to live. And so understanding not only the nuances of the country they're arriving to, what are the differences, what are the similarities to where I've come from, but more importantly is understanding, what do I need to do to fit in, adapt, belong? And so without the language, that's very, very difficult. And, whether it's for registering my children to school, whether it's going to the grocery store and reading a sign without seeing the item and understanding what it is I'm purchasing, whether it's navigating a job offer, whether it's getting a job, understanding what is a credit card, reading an agreement and knowing what that means. And so to me, language is critical if this is where I'm going to live versus visit. Because if I'm visiting, it's kind of like throwaway. Okay, learn it now, and when I'm here, I can ask the basics of where do I shop, where do I buy a car, how do I get somewhere. But when I'm living there, especially if I have children, how am I helping them integrate into their new environment? So I'd say it's pretty critical. I would put that as number one above all anything else when they first come.
Yes, because communication, right? How can you communicate to get around, to get the information and the education that you need if you don't speak the language? That's what, Okay, I'm making some mistakes. It's okay, just to show. But at least, you know, they can get ahead faster, I think, if they have English
100%.
definitely as a second language. And how about French? Do you speak French, my dear
It
Janet?
is one of my, I'll be honest to say, it is one of my probably personal, I would consider it not a failure, because life is not about failures, but it's probably the one thing I regret the most. Because it is the second official language of this country, and it is actually, when you travel, probably more prominent than any other language. Spanish is pretty up there as well, depending on the countries you're visiting. But I grew up out west, and so west, other than the awesome skiing we did out west, it was you could go to English, or pardon me, French immersion schools, but it was never used anywhere else. And so with anything in life, especially language, if you're not using it, so my parents wouldn't have been speaking it even if I would have gone French immersion. But I think in the newcomer population, 100% that we should have it to support. And all of our teams that I work with across the settlement organizations, we all have a percentage of our employee base that in fact do speak the language in order to be able to help and assist, for sure. And we're the national capital city of the country. So yes, so I fully, maybe that should be retirement 2.0, and I'll come and take French from you, my friend.
Maybe you can go to France. I can have you stay over with my friends.
There
and,
you go.
And I have one of my teachers is in Spain, right?
Nice.
And she speaks French, so maybe you should go with her.
There you go. It's not over yet. I've got more years. I might still get French.
Retirement, I feel like, you know, it's the start of like the second part of your life. Exactly. You know, maybe you're going to write a book also.
Oh, somebody else suggested that yesterday. I'm
really?
Like, yeah.
Why not? Because
I don't know.
People, I don't know. You'll see. But I think it's a good way to pay forward, or, you know, to leave something behind for people to help them navigate or understand maybe the culture, because you've been in the financial world for all your life almost, or is there a chapter that didn't involve
all my life? I was 37 years with the TD Bank. I started in Alberta. I would say I was blessed, because without knowing it, but I have actually had the pleasure of seeing literally every city and province in this country through that career. I started as a part-time teller as I went through university to do my undergrad, and then just progressed. And I lived and worked in Calgary, Vancouver, Winnipeg, Toronto, and I retired here. And so, and I started as a part-time teller. I ran 2 or 3 different business lines for them, and I retired as the senior vice president here for the retail banking operations. So a huge, awesome career, and then took 2 years off and went, okay, now what? And that's how I landed here. And with OCLF, I didn't think I was done. So back to, are you really retired? No, none of my friends were retired yet. So I was like, what do I do? And I felt like I wanted to give something back to the community from a place that I actually had deep, deep experience and knowledge. And so I think the benefit of living across the country, because we had immigration everywhere within our financial sector, for sure, as well as then landing here in the capital city and going, okay. But I've literally been probably everywhere in the city. Northern Ontario, I know all the places. So it's,
you can be a tour guide,
exactly.
You know, just and do the language stuff at the same time. I don't know.
There you go.
I don't know. Just, and what about the biggest lesson that you've learned throughout those years? Even for life or work, or, you know, just personally, what have you learned from all those years?
I think the biggest one on a personal level is to stop and smell the roses, because we get so focused on the work we do and the things that we are because of the work we do. But taking, you know, so when I think back on my journey, because I have 2, they're now mature adult women, but 2 younger daughters at the time and a husband that followed me around. It wasn't until our 3rd move, when we went to Winnipeg, we went, okay, what can we do that's cool here, and really immerse ourselves personally into the community and into the environment. And so that's my big one, is life flies by. And so if you're in a situation where you can experience, if you're over in France, like,
pop over to the neighboring country if you're familiar with France and learn something about them. Go see the top. So when we travel now, we pick out what are the top 10 things to do, and some of them are crazy, but we try to hit them off our box, because you might never get back there. And if nothing else in life is that life can be short, but enjoy it and experience it. Work is a means to an end, and we're blessed if you love it, which I would say in my whole career. Did we have cranky days and ups and downs? For sure. But I would say I was blessed to do things that really touched my heart and allowed me to interact with people I met person. But on the flip side, sometimes we work too hard and don't get the balance and don't enjoy the moment. So that would probably be my biggest lesson.
Yes, you're right, because balance is something everybody wants, right? Work 9 to 5, have a little break, I don't work after. But then if you listen to all the big entrepreneurs, there is no such thing as a work balance. So what do you think? Is there a balance really between life and work? Should there be one, or what?
I think there should be one. And I think I would say I've gotten closer to it. I'm not there yet. Like, it's still a work in progress. But on the point of entrepreneurs, because we do spend a lot of time with them, I think they have a harder time of doing that than somebody like us that potentially should have a 9 to 5 opportunity, and then we elect to work late into the evenings or on the weekends. Because when you're an entrepreneur, it's 100% of your time, your headspace, your everything, all day, all night. And if it's a retail or somebody that's working in an operation that runs 7 days a week, they never leave it. And so I think of those people and go, how do they find the time to make time for themselves and not be so consumed in, okay, I have to do this and I have to do that. And our advice is generally to find a second in charge, like somebody, your 2IC, who actually has the same passion for the business as if it was their own. Because that's usually the entrepreneur's, okay, I don't want to let Vanessa touch this because this is my baby, right? But if you find that Vanessa's as passionate as you are about your business, then you can step away because you have the trust in that relationship that 2IC individual will do the things that you would do if you were there. Because for me, entrepreneurs are probably the worst in able to balance their work life, because they leave work and then it's okay, I got to do my invoicing, and I need to order inventory, or I need to, I have to do payroll. And when you first start out, guess what? You're jack of all trades. You're doing all of those things. And so it's trying to surround yourself with people that can help you get that balance.
I know, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki mentioned that you have to have your team, but it's not that easy to actually find that team. But I have to admit, it took me way too long to delegate that. Yes, to trust someone enough, or to give a chance, because actually the person that's helping me a lot now, I just gave her a chance. It was not really her field, but I don't know, I felt something, and I knew I had reached a point where it was time to delegate more. But it's not an easy step to do, I know. When you read the books, have a legal team, have your team. It's like, oh yes, woo-hoo-hoo. But then, you're right. As an entrepreneur, it's another step that needs to be taken, but very important. But I still work a lot. Like, it's funny. I don't see it as the 9 to 5. I just work and just enjoy it. Weekends, every day. I don't count the hours, but really I love what I do too. And that's where it's hard as well to find.
And I think that's the thing. If it's a passion for you, it's not work.
That's right.
It's part of who you are and your DNA. And I think to the other point you made is having the trust in somebody. And sometimes it's just to give them this much. And then, now I can give them this much. Because what that does allow you or an entrepreneur is space to think about the strategic thing. Because I would say the challenge for entrepreneurs is they have a focus to get up and running. But once they're up and running, then all of a sudden, if it's a good business, it started getting busy. So all they're doing is spending their time on running and operating the business, not thinking about it strategically. And COVID would be a great example to many. Like, what's our model? All of a sudden, pandemic hits and the world can't function this way. If those leaders had somewhere along the way went, could I take this virtual? Could I take this online? What are my ability to serve the community if something happened? And I mean, it's easy to look backwards after a pandemic, but if you're in a business
and leading strategically, those are the things you need to think about. But new entrepreneurs are just focused on making payroll, managing the business, and growing it. And it's just when it starts to grow, there's a sort of a key point there where before it really goes this way, you got to pause and re-strategize and say, okay, where are we headed? What we started thinking we wanted to be this, but look, we actually have runway now. We might actually be able to go here. Do we want to? Like, that's actually a decision point strategically, but most people just keep going and then go, oh my gosh, how did I get here? And do I have the people to support it, whether it's HR or legal or otherwise?
No, absolutely. And you know that the labor market right now is a bit tough on new immigrants, even the quotas that are imposed now. Do you recommend that they should try the entrepreneurship route, or the advice will be still like, try to get a job, like in the part where we said, okay, breather, so settle first and then maybe move into that direction, or should they just try to go for it? I don't know.
You know what? I don't think I have the real answer to that, because I don't think there is an answer. Yeah. It's all dependent on the person, really and truly. Because if you are entrepreneurial by nature and spirit, nothing will stop you. They're going to come. They're going to be entrepreneurial. They're going to, find their niche in their new world, and it's going to happen because it's just in their DNA almost. But if you're coming, and we do see a lot of newcomers, and I understand why, but are very still attached to their home country in terms of things like spices, fabrics, art, things that remind them of home, and they want to bring them to their country, their new country, because there's a great audience for those people, because they're surrounded by countrymen from their own homes that will support their businesses. So that's one thing we notice with newcomer entrepreneurs is they are very, very supportive of those from their country. So there's a higher level of success for those people because they have a natural affinity to take care of one another from the countries they're from. But to answer your other part of that question, so if you're entrepreneurial, you can come and you'll be successful. I would say when you come to a new country, even if it's an entry-level position, it will help you learn what are the norms, how do people do business in this country. Lots of countries, it's like, okay, I'll put some money on the table and we'll go, well, yeah, that works if it works, but if that's not how this country works, and it all has to be documented, and we all have, different regulations to follow, and we need to take care of our employees. Those are critical things to understand. And one of the best ways to see that is to live it in an organization as an employee. Oh, I have to do an annual performance review. Oh, I have an offer letter when you arrive. I lay out to you what your benefits are. And this is how we make money. And this is, here's what our profit and loss looks like. And those things you can learn at a ground level in an organization, while at the same time understanding the country better, understanding the operating environment of the business world in that country, and P.S., learning English as a business language, because that's different than learning English as learning English for day-to-day conversation. And so those things would be critical when you do want to start the business, because if you don't understand the nuances of the language being used, you're going to struggle. People won't understand what you're asking them for or what supports you need. So I'd say it's dependent on, you could do either one. I don't think there's a right answer. The wrong answer is if you're not that person that's so entrepreneurial that you're going to succeed regardless, take the time to understand the culture and environment by getting a job, for sure.
Yes, absolutely. Have you seen an evolution with entrepreneurship in Canada? I feel it has increased a lot, the amounts of programs that are available for newcomers. I don't know, because I remember when I started, I took the breather that you mentioned. I took the time just to be with people, talk to people, to kind of figure out what was the culture, because I was on the Quebec side at the time, and France and Quebec, sorry guys, but it's not the same.
They are different.
There are different things, we're cousins, but I took that time and it helped, because then when I got the job, I knew a little bit about what vocabulary to use or things, how they functioned a little bit. So do you think it has evolved in a good way to promote this entrepreneurship program for those new immigrants, or is it better to go the regular route, which is focus on getting the job and then maybe down the road, start your own business? I don't know.
I think, again, sort of back to my response to the last question, I think it's a balance of both, because you learn different things in the different places. But to answer the earlier part of your question is, do I think there's more supports? Absolutely. I do believe immigration, a pandemic, technology, like you can buy anything online and it's delivered to your house in 15 minutes. And that's a plus or a minus, right? Like, as a new business, depending on your product, you're competing with the likes of a big Amazon machine, right? And so that's one of the cautions. But part of being educated on entrepreneurship is you'll understand those risks before you go in, because if you've got good entrepreneurial training, you're going to understand, what are the risks, what is the opportunity, how does my product or service fit into that niche. What's my competitor landscape look like? So all of those things are part of your basic entrepreneurship training. And so if I was having the magic wand and I was the fairy godmother, I would say, get a job so that you've got income and you can learn some of the things I just mentioned. But at the same time, because most entrepreneurial training, in particular for newcomers, is offered days, nights, weekends. Enroll in that while you're doing that. So you're taking care of your family and all of the day-to-day. You're integrating into a new country. You're learning a new language. But at the same time, you're actually able to work on a business or a business plan for your business, because going through entrepreneurship training will have you go through all of that. And then by the time you're done that process, you're going, okay, I'm in. I'm going to do this. Then you go, bye-bye job, or you don't. You might even transition, do both at the same time until this is up and running as an entrepreneurial business to a level that you can say, okay, my family and I can live off of this. Because we do see often it's all or none, which it isn't. As soon as they step away from the job, they're in an environment that has a lot more risk, because your paycheck is dependent on so many things outside of your control. So we would always counsel, keep your feet in both sides until your dream supports the other.
Yes, I had to do the first option, the nothing all, because I would have been in a conflict of interest. Because I was working for a language school and I started a language school, so I had to plan. That was a bit. But I agree with you. Why not do both and see, once the other one takes off, then you decide if you want to leave the other part or not. And you worked in finances. Is the field of finance the same as administration? Because I hear a lot of that in Ottawa. Like, there is a master's in administration. What do you know what that is? I never really asked. I felt that it was to work for the government, but I don't know. What does a master, for example, in administration do when you come from the financial sector? Are they related?
So I can't answer that question. So I'm going to admit I don't have an answer to what is the bachelor or master's of admin. My read on it would be the same as yours, because I'd never really heard of it until I got to the capital city.
See, there you go, right?
Is it, relative to government? I shouldn't opine. In the financial sector, it was all a BCom or an MBA. So I have an MBA because it's all about business. So you have a master's in business or a bachelor's in commerce. And so, and I think because, again, those two degrees, whether it's at the bachelor level or the master's level, are teaching you about the broad business, so from strategy, from finances, from marketing, risk management, governance, it goes on and on and on. When I think of a Bachelor of Admin, I think it's a deep, deep space, important space for work that you do that may require that, but it's not as broad as a business degree as I understand it. But we might have to look that up after this podcast.
Well, you're right. It's just that sometimes I'm curious. I'm like, okay, because you hear that all the time. Like, I'm doing a master's in administration. I'm like, okay, well, what for? Because to me, someone who's coming from the financial background, it feels like they're a bit similar. Like, you could transition from one to the other without having to go back to school. But I don't know, right? I guess I don't know. Because to me, sometimes it's a lot of money to spend. And a lot of our newcomers, they're enticed to go back to school and, to get a grant or bursary. But then they also get a loan. And that's when another trap opens, right, for them, or to fall into anyway.
So that opens the door, though, to a great option for them, which is called, the first part is credential recognition.
Okay.
So the reason they probably go to school is it's incredibly important, and I would agree, if you've got a degree from another country, you've worked hard wherever you are. If it's a bachelor's, if it's a master's, in whatever, whether it's education or administration or business admin, they've invested in themselves at a level that would have gotten them, presumably, a reasonable or accelerated a career in their career path. So the saddest thing for me, and I'll be very honest, is that anytime I'm in an Uber, I ask the driver where they're from and what is their educational background. And it just breaks my heart, because I would tell you better than 90% of those people are higher educated than most line level employees in our own country. So the next thing I do is pull out the OCLF business card and say, we can help you. Please call us. So for me, it's an injustice, I guess, in some ways. Should degrees be matched equal to equal? No. If I went to another country with a Canadian degree and it's got no bearing on the work they do in their country, then I should be required to do equivalency testing or upgrading my existing degree to their standard. And so what credential recognition allows in this country, and we are blessed to be part of we're the lead agency with 3 community partners that will hold newcomers' hands through the whole process of getting their credentials assessed, meaning they come to the country. We say, show us your educational background. There's 2 assessment organizations Canada-wide, so they're standard across Canada. And they'll come back and say, here's your degree, here's what it's valued at here in Canada, and here's what would be required to get the equivalency. So then the second thing we do through the OCLF part of this is we actually will, through a government grant, have been gifted the ability to give you at a very reasonable rate of interest-only payments when you're in school and until you're educated, to get those credentials that have been mapped out done. So they can use that money for their educational costs. There's a nominal amount they can use for housing and grocery and so forth for their family while they're in school. Once they graduate, we have another partner organization who assists with mentorship, career resume prep, interview prep, and we help them. That organization then helps them find jobs that are commensurate to what they used to do, not driving Uber. And so the circle of life then is once they're employed, then they start repaying that loan on their finances. And again, very favorable terms. So I think it's really, really important that it isn't just a country to land in. You should feel that you're contributing, that you're thriving, that you're adding value. The 2 biggest roadblocks are back to the very first thing we talked about, English and English as a second language, really learning that so that you can go to a classroom and understand and contribute. And then certainly support getting those credentials recognized and living your best self in your new country. Because one of the saddest things is seeing people that are surviving, not thriving when they come to a country where they have huge hopes before they arrive. So that's my little plug for credential recognition. And there's 6 agencies across Canada. In fairness, OCLF is blessed to be the one in Ottawa, but there's 6 of us right now that are federally funded to support that program. So highly recommend people look into it.
No, absolutely, because you need to have the foundation, right? For anything in life, you need to have that strong foundation. So if it takes, English and credentials, let's start with those 2. And then the credit card. And the car.
Exactly.
And you get you run after the bus. I remember those days with my baby and waiting in the cold, not the bus coming.
I know.
But it's stories after.
And it's everywhere, I was out west recently. I was in the Bay. They were closing, and I was this lovely lady with an accent serving me at the counter. And I said, what country are you from and what did you do there? And she was from the Ukraine, and she was a lawyer. And I said, what are you doing here? That I need to take care of my family. I handed her my card. I said, call us. She's here in Ottawa. I said, we will help you. We will find some help for you. But I think that's the biggest piece, is that as organizations, as people, we interact with people every day, and I'll tell me your story because I'm nosy, but not really. It's because I really have an innate need to make sure that people are thriving where they come. And so I think over time, my hope is that before I'm really, really, really retired, that we will see more willingness within the communities to support and say, why are you doing this? Let us get you help.
And maybe it's because might be some miscommunication, right? Because I didn't know lawyers, the idea that I had was that they had to start over again from zero, like doctors, right? They are doctors in their countries. I understand that they don't have the same technology or same access. The training is different, but they do. What I had heard is that they have to start from scratch, right? So now it seems like from what you're saying, there's a bit of hope. So it's nice. We need to get the word out.
Absolutely,
so
yeah.
For those lawyers,
absolutely, it's like an accelerated program. In some countries, they actually have better technology than we have, and so so there's some of their programs are reduced because they have those experiences for sure. And the other thing we often educate people is. Because they come and they'll say, well, I have a family and this is my immediate need. I don't have time to go back to school for 3 years or 2 or what have you. So we try to at least get them in what we call related field jobs. So they're in the field and then they can still elect there's no time limit that you're in the country for X and this program isn't available. The only X would be if we don't get the support federally for funding to support it. But as long as that's there, they could come back after they've settled, they're working in the field, so they understand, back to the experience in a job, try to get that job in the field, healthcare somewhere, and then understand again how it works compared to where you've come from. And then that will allow them to then say, okay, I actually do still want to be a doctor or a lawyer or what have you. But yeah.
And what do you think about volunteering? Because that could be something they could also do maybe on the side if they don't want to commit 100%, but they could join a community where they can volunteer on the weekends a little bit, maybe in the fields that they want to access later on.
I think
because it's huge. In France, I was in France a couple of years ago, and I tried to volunteer, and man, it was hard. Like I could see the difference between Canada and France. We don't really recognize, in France, they don't really recognize volunteer that much. Right, so here it seems that it's a bit more organized, more something that you do, that is recognized as well if you have that on a resume, depending, on the situation. But
I think that's actually a really, really good idea. And this city actually has an organization that works on matching people to the right volunteer opportunities. So definitely worth looking into. And I do think, to your point, it's another great way to enter a space that you may have an interest in and understanding, okay, let me see how it operates. So again, different than having a job at a base level and then sort of entering it, but you'd actually be able to see it firsthand, how it operates, what are the norms, who are the decision makers, who are we helping? Is it what I thought it might be? So I'm a big fan of volunteering, and I do think that plays a part. The challenge, I would say, that typically most newcomers have, they're just so overwhelmed when they come, in particular if they don't have the language. So language is always the first, and then job and food on the table for most people is second. So it's a matter of could you fit that in with everything else? Because I think we underestimate, I certainly did before I joined the sector, I underestimated how long that integration journey takes, in particular when they have a family or when they have English as a second language. And so those two things really extend the time of integration for newcomers. If, we see young people, students that come, they have no problem because they're going to run the world, and they probably will, right? But they have a different level of confidence. They have a different level of commitment to a family or financially. So, but yeah, volunteering I think is a great idea, Ms. Vanessa.
Yes, okay, my dear. Any last thoughts on what immigrants should do or could do to help fast track a little bit the integration in Canada? because we've covered quite a lot, you know, to
Indeed.
take a breather, do the credentials, try to get a job, to get food on the table, the shelter and all that. And then later on the credit cards. Do a volunteer. If you cannot access maybe to school, maybe you can do that. Any last things you'd like to share?
Summary, ma'am. That's awesome. You know what? I think for me, it's embrace the moment, enjoy, you know, remember why you're here. But definitely don't be afraid to ask, because I think that's the other thing culturally often, and even in our own, that we don't put up our hands and go, okay, I need help with something. And because there are so many organizations and individuals in this city that are and across the country, let's be fair, that are willing and open arm want to help you as a newcomer integrate. And I think at times newcomers feel like they're not part of, and so they don't feel that they're as confident to ask. But don't be afraid to, because you know what? Your next door neighbor, the person on the bus beside you. This morning, the gentleman trying to help me figure out how to put the thing in my app to get the parking. I've never done it before. That's what makes this country and the city special. And so just knowing there's people around, you might get 2 no's, but you're going to get 3 yeses, and they're here to help.
Well, I got a yes from you. I asked you and you said yes right away. I didn't have to chase you or anything. It was pretty fantastic. No, I agreed. And Northern America grows on you that way, because I had to really voice things a bit more. I think in France I was a bit more reserved, but the Anglophone speaking countries, like I went to England before and then the US, and you learn to speak up and voice your opinion and say things and ask for things. And I think it's important, definitely. So remember, you have to ask for things. Okay,
Absolutely.
Don't be shy.
Absolutely. And that's good advice as I retire and look to travel. I'll be asking for help.
Absolutely. We can't
For
wait,
sure.
my dear Jane. I wish you all the best for this next chapter of your life. And thank you so much. Oops, for coming.
My pleasure, Miss Vanessa. Hopefully it adds some value. And I will be watching the newcomer and population and the work that all of the organizations in the city do to make a difference.
Yes, and we want to thank them actually for all the good work as well. So thank you guys.
Absolutely.
And thank you for tuning in. Bye.